Thank you, Director Gibbs. It's so nice to hear from you, and so much of what you've already said is I'm going to repeat because um, first off, I do want to thank each and every person in the room and online for your willingness to be part of this group, this task force. Just really have a tremendous amount of gratitude for that because to give your time and expertise and be willing to show up to participate in this way takes a lot. It takes a lot out of your day and all the other things that you have to do. So I appreciate that. I wanted to share a little bit about why I thought this policy is important at this point in our history. And this job is so great because I get to learn a little bit about a whole bunch of stuff. And I didn't know the history of our state trust lands before this last year and a half or so. So, learning about the history of our state trust land, what the State Land Board has been doing over the last 149 years, was fascinating, encouraging, and uplifting to me. And I thought, what a great opportunity. Here we are coming up on our sesquicentennial, it's a hard word to say. What a great opportunity to look forward to the next 150 years on how we can look at this precious resource of lands that the federal government gave to us 150 years ago and how we can put together, I think of all of you as a think tank, a think tank full of people of expertise to think creatively, to brainstorm together, and to look at ways to identify the lands that we have under our care and look for ways to build on what the State Land Board has been doing. This is, I wanted to make it clear that this bill and this task force is um, not in conflict with anything the State Land Board has already done. It's really to build upon all that good work and expertise that has been there and to be able to bring in more voices from across the state, which is who you all represent, to look at what some of the challenges might be, some of the opportunities to advance conservation. We have a lot of new knowledge and innovation that has occurred over the last 150 years, how we can make sure we're looking at our agricultural leases to maintain those and how we might be able to think creatively about those, considering our wildlife habitat and with climate change really speeding up as we see on a daily and monthly basis, how can we have that hat on with more climate resiliency in mind and then think about our recreation possibilities, realizing that we need to maintain that low conflict recreation so we protect these lands even more than 150 years into the future. So, having public input that you all will be doing as well. I just think, again, I look at this as part of our 150th birthday. And this report will be a birthday present to ourselves. And I look forward so much to seeing what you all come up with. Um, Again, be brave, be willing to just throw out ideas, knowing that they may not get very far. But as long as all of you that are participating are willing to listen to each other and collaborate, I just think keeping the stewardship of the land and the purpose of the state lands as far as the fiduciary responsibility in mind. I just envision that you're going to come up with some great ideas, and I really look forward to the report that will come in front of our committee sometime next year. And again, thank you, Director Gibbs and DNR and all the folks behind the scenes, also my co-sponsors in the Senate, Senator Roberts and Wallace, for their help. It was a pleasure to shepherd this bill through the process, and I wish you all luck. And again, thank you so much for your time and expertise towards this project.
Thank you so much, Representative McCormick, and welcome to everybody. My name is Ryan Golton. I'm going to stand up so the folks in the back can see too. So I'm going to introduce the project team and the facilitation team in a minute, but first wanted to walk you through what we're doing today and sort of just the overall agenda, which you should all have. And also then give you a chance to meet each other. And then we'll introduce the project team. So first of all, if anyone hasn't signed in, if you just came in, hey Fletcher, please do sign in. Make sure you sign in, get a name tag if you don't have one, get a name tent if you are a work group member. Secondly, if you don't have an agenda, there are some in the back if you haven't seen one, but all of you here at the table hopefully have one. And so let me just walk you through a little bit. So first of all, this is a lot to cover. Obviously, this is going to be a really ambitious 9-month process. We knew from talking to all of you work group members and tag members, which we have done prior to today, that you're really interested in getting a lot of information, just context setting, background level setting. So what about state trust lands, about the land board, and also what your charge is. So we're going to spend some time today just getting clear on all of that, hopefully, right? And giving you the beginnings of that foundation. We definitely wanted to give you a chance to talk to each other and hear from each other a bit. There's a lot to pack in, and today is a lot of information and information heavy. Future meetings will have, every single meeting will have time for you to talk in smaller groups with each other, hear from each other, offer your perspectives, hear ideas, and be able to vet and opine on them. So just know that that's in store. But today, those are some of the foundational goals we had. So in terms of your agenda, just to walk you through real quick, after we do some introductions, we're going to walk you through, and Erin Ray is going to walk through what does the legislation ask you to do? What is your charge? What are the deliverables and outcomes that are being asked? It's a lot. And so we're going to try to break it down for you today and over the course of the next couple months as you go forward. Then we're going to hear, we've spoken to all of you work group members and advisory group members. So we're going to give you a snapshot of what we heard. You all should have also a document that summarizes those themes. So hopefully everyone's read that before today. That was your homework. We're not going to go through it in detail. But Mark Haggerty is going to give a quick review of it. So we're expecting that people are fairly familiar with it. Hopefully that's true. But we're going to really be interested in hearing from you. What do you think? So we'll be in small groups after that to hear your impressions, what's missing, what needs clarification, what other questions do you have. But in between those two things of hearing about those themes and getting in groups to discuss them, we're going to be hearing from Nicole Rosemarine, who's the director of the State Land Board, all about all that level setting that you've asked for, the context and background for the land board and state trust lands. This is there's a lot. And so there's gonna be a lot of information. All of it will be available after today's meeting, the PowerPoints from today. So just know that. And finally, we're gonna just be talking about how the work is gonna do its work. So you've seen hopefully the charter that is, still, it's a living document. If we need to tweak it, we can. But what are the responsibilities and roles being asked of you? Same with the technical advisory group and others. And then Wendy Padilla from DNR Deputy Director is going to talk about expectations for boards and commissions and work groups like yours, or in terms of open meetings laws and all of that. So that's today. And then we'll close by 12:30. There's going to be lunch. Thank you so much to the State Land Board for providing breakfast, coffee, lunch. It's really helpful, especially for those of you who came a long way, which people here really appreciate, and just recognizing that it's a big chunk of time. Okay, any questions on the agenda? Anything I missed, Sam, with respect to the agenda? Okay, so I think we can do housekeeping real quick. And Tim, I think you can advance the slides because the first one should probably be. Let me just say a couple things about housekeeping. So first of all, if you need to take a break, there's restrooms are down the hall on the right. And we're going to talk in a second about folks who are here online and how we can make sure to engage you. We are going to have opportunities for public comment at these in-person work group meetings. And no one here from the public wanted to make a public comment today, but we're going to have the opportunity to do that in meetings going forward. So just know that that's true. We also are going to record these meetings. So you probably heard the meeting is going to be recorded. And those recordings will be available on the website. So just know that if you have folks who are really interested in these meetings, they can see them. We'll also have meeting summaries from each meeting. We'll have the PowerPoints. And sorry. I think we're good. We're good now. Yeah, we're gonna have a break. I've neglected to mention right around 10:30. So don't hold me to it exactly, but right around then we'll make sure to take a break. All right, with that, we're gonna introduce the project team, the planning team in a minute, but first we'd like you to introduce yourselves to each other. So here's how we're gonna do that. First, we're gonna ask you all at the table, work group members, to just turn to the person next to you. And we're gonna take 5 minutes, and here are the questions that are up there that we want you to speak to each other about. So what is most important to you about this work group's effort? And why? Why does it matter to you or your community or your constituency? So that's the one question, that's all. So turn to the person, and Tim, you don't count as a work group member, so. Tim will just be, pretend he's not there for just this purpose of this. TAG members, technical advisory members, just will ask you and other folks from the state and who are here visiting, please just get in groups of like 3 or 4 and feel free to share the same question with each other. And then what we'd like to do after that, after 5 minutes, we'll bring you back together, and we're just gonna go around to hear from each of you with respect to the 3 other questions that are there. And so we're not gonna introduce every single person who's here, but we are, after you all hear from each other on the work group, because we really, really want you to have a sense of who each other is, because we're gonna be doing this together for the next 9 months. We'll have the technical advisory members just introduce yourself and say what state agency you're from. Good? Hey. Thank you. All right, so before we dive into what it is that you're here to do and the charge of this work group, as always for every meeting, this group has so much curiosity and openness, so just really support that. Continuing to share what's important to you and why we're gonna be, I think it was some of you over here talked about the importance of understanding each other's values and perspectives so we can come up with creative ideas together. So starting with the values and what matters to you. If you're somebody who tends to lean in and speak a lot, we ask you to sort of step back as much as you can. If you're someone who tends to step back and listen more, we ask you to step in. So we want to have sort of balanced participation. Everyone encouraging you to just have your sort of collective hat on about how can we integrate all of these interests. So many of you wear all these hats and bring a lot of perspective, so I'm not concerned about it. And lastly, on a sort of logistical note, for people online, please just use your hand raise function on Zoom or put a note in the chat, and Mira will keep funneling questions and comments to us as relevant. People in the room, work group members, if you have a comment or a question, we're gonna, wait until the appropriate time to get to them, but just put your name tag on its side, so to indicate that, and we'll get to you. And we're gonna prioritize work group member conversation, but if somebody from the TAG or someone else has like a burning, like I gotta say something or ask something, feel free to put your hand up and we'll do that too. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Aaron Ray, and he's gonna walk you through what it is that you're doing.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aaron Ray. I'm the Director of Policy in the Executive Director's Office at the Colorado Department of Natural Resources. And I'm part of the support team that's helping you work through this process. I want to start by thanking you again. You're going to hear this a lot, but thanking you again for your service to the state, for your willingness to participate in this effort, for the expertise that you bring to this conversation. I do think we have a great team to support you. And we're really excited about the outcomes of this work. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about what you have been charged with doing. And so I'm going to start with the general purpose of this work group, which you're all familiar with. We have been charged by law to study opportunities to advance conservation, climate resilience, biodiversity, and sustainable, equitable, and low conflict outdoor recreation. That's a big charge. That's a lot to unpack over the next few months. We've also been charged with doing that while also remembering and being consistent with the state land board's fiduciary responsibility. And some of you mentioned that this morning as you did your introductions. So that is always the general charge that we have. Next slide, Tim. I'm not going to go through this in detail because you've all just introduced yourself, but it's important to note that we have appointments to this group that represent a whole host of experiences and expertise. We have folks focused on education, on agriculture, on conservation and recreation. You've all just introduced yourself. We have folks focused on energy and housing and local governments and tribal interests. And what I loved about the introductions is many of you across these sort of silos, right? You all have experiences in many of these areas. And so I really am excited for you to bring not just the interests that you're charged with representing, which you're charged with representing, but also your broader interests as well. And I won't forget that we have economic and legal expertise here to help us think through these challenges. You also just met the technical advisory members who bring all of the expertise of multiple state agencies to this group. And I really encourage you to use that expertise, right? You have your perspectives and expertise and your experience, but you also have all of these state agencies as a resource. And so please don't be shy about asking for things that you need from these various departments as you think through the charge that you have. So we've got a great group. I want to talk a bit about the legislation because I think it's really important that we start by remembering that you've been asked to do very specific things. And it's not just that broad purpose that I just read to you. There, if you've read the bill, are some very specific questions and tasks that you are charged with. I'm going to take a few minutes this morning and we'll just page through those. I'm not going to read them to you. We're not going to go into them in detail. I don't expect that you've memorized them. One of the things that the support team will do over the next few months is bring you back to those specific questions, right? There are lots of interests in this group. You articulated lots of things you want to do, and I welcome all of those. But at a minimum, we have to meet the requirements of the statute. And what I want to sort of emphasize to you is there are some very specific things that we're going to have to do. And as the support team, we're going to bring you back to those questions throughout the next few months. So the first thing I'll note is before we even get to what you have to do, the bill requires that the state land board do some work to help you meet your charge. And so by February 1st, the state land board is required to review existing leases on long-term stewardship trust parcels, to provide to the work group a report on occasions where leases might have been denied because the lease was incompatible with the uses of those parcels. The state land board has to provide to you an analysis of public recreational access and management solutions. I encourage you to, when you have these slides or the bill itself, like read through those specific things. But one of the first things that you will do is you'll get a report from the state land board with all of these items to help inform your conversations. Okay, so that's before you even have to start working on the charge that you've received. So there are basically two fundamental deliverables that you have to produce with lots of help. The first is an interim report due in March that's submitted to the governor, to the relevant committees of the legislature, to the state board of land commissioners, and to the executive director of DNR. Okay, so all of those entities are expecting that interim report, and that due in March will have preliminary findings and recommendations. That's not your final recommendations, but we do have to produce some preliminary findings in March. And then in September, we have to submit the final report to the same folks. And this is where statute gets very detailed about what has to be in that report. And that's what I want to just orient us to here for a few minutes. So this is small text. I'm not going to read it. I don't expect you to have memorized it, but I'm trying to emphasize here the specificity with which we have to do our work. So encourage you to read this on your own time. At a most basic level, the work group is charged with providing recommendations, first, to implement the mandate of Section 10 of Article 9 of the state constitution. And that has to include recommendations on how we further the long-term productivity and sound stewardship of state trust lands, how we preserve and enhance the beauty of those lands, how we promote the long-term productivity of those lands for agriculture, and how do we provide sustainable, equitable, and low conflict recreational opportunities, right? That's the general charge. So that's what we have to do. Before we continue with the report requirements, I want to orient people around that first charge to implement the mandate of Section 10. So on the next slide, I've just highlighted a few, okay, what does Section 10 of Article 9 say? Because this is the first thing that you're required to do. And so this is for your reference, what that section of the Constitution says, that school lands are an endowment of land assets held in a perpetual intergenerational public trust, and that the distribution of use of those lands has to benefit the public schools, right? And you all highlighted that in your comments this morning, and it's really gratifying to see that you're coming with that orientation already. The last thing I want to highlight is the economic productivity of those lands, the Constitution tells us, is dependent on sound stewardship. Okay, it's not just about the revenue, it's also about the stewardship that enables those lands to generate that revenue. So the first thing you have to do is think about that mandate. So let's go back to the report requirements. Next slide. So your study has to include, and then you'll see A, B, and you're going to see that this goes all the way down to, I think, H. There's a lot of things that the report has to include. You have to solicit, from regional partnership initiatives and counties, a process to identify state trust land parcels that hold opportunities for recreation, conservation, and agriculture. Okay, so we got to look at some parcels. And when you look at those parcels, you have to think about them in specific ways. Again, conservation, climate resilience, water resources, habitat connectivity. Next slide, please. Again, as you look at identifying those parcels, you're looking for conservation and educational purposes. That's a new term that wasn't in the previous set of requirements. And as you're doing that, there's now a whole subset of things that you have to consider. Considering the opportunity to create or expand state park or state wildlife areas. Looking at future long-term management solutions for those parks and wildlife areas. Thinking about future and current public use by school children. Tying back to the educational interest, not just the revenue generated for education, but the opportunity for school children to actually use the lands themselves. Next slide, please. You also have to think about those parcels from the perspective of high value lands related to climate resilient conservation and recreation. And the bill goes into even more detail about what characteristics do you have to look at. Things like high priority habitat, wetlands and riparian areas. Again, I'm not expecting you to memorize this, but I want you to walk away from this remembering, hey, we've got some very specific work that we have to do. Next slide. You have to make recommendations on how to advance conservation and recreation on state trust lands. In doing that, you have to think about some of the challenges and conflicts associated with recreation on state trust lands. You have to think about the utilization of non-perpetual conservation leases, on implementing conservation and leasing opportunities. You need to consider what would the net revenue changes or management changes be associated with some of these things. You need to think about two specific trusts, the internal improvements and saline trusts, and their relationship to the Division of Parks and Wildlife's mission. And that's where having Fletcher from CPW and the State Land Board staff who have worked on these things as experts will be really helpful. Next slide, please. And I'm getting close to the end here, and hopefully you're realizing how specific the charge that you have is at this point. You need to assess the parcels in the long-term stewardship trust. You need to think about places where the uses of those may be incompatible with the purposes of that long-term stewardship trust. You need to make recommendations about a process to resolve any of those incompatibilities. And again, we'll hear lots from the State Land Board about how that is already being done. And this is the last part of your charge here. Evaluate the long-term value of these assets and make recommendations on how those parcels are leased. And then finally, think about how do we improve public engagement of stakeholders through this whole process. So that's a lot of work. Our job as a support team is to refocus you as we go through this work on those particular things that you have to produce, so that when we get to that interim report and that final report, we all can feel good that we've met the charge of the legislature. Last, I started with what the State Land Board staff are going to do to help you kick this off with their initial report in February. The bill, in addition to telling us to deliver that report to the legislature, also directs the Board of Land Commissioners to consider your recommendations. So by February of 2027, they have to look at your recommendations and go through a process to figure out how do they incorporate those into the work that they do. So not only will DNR and the governor and the legislature look at your recommendations, but the law actually requires that the State Land Board consider them and incorporate them into their work. Which is nice because in these groups, we often worry this thing is just going to sit on a shelf. The law requires that it doesn't just sit on a shelf, and I think that's really exciting. So that was a lot. We've tried to boil this down into one slide. What does that actually mean for you? And so this is a chart you're going to see again that tries to summarize all of those very specific statutory requirements into some broad buckets that will guide your work over the next few months. So I don't want to go into this in detail, but that's what this summary is. And when you see this slide in the future, I want you to think back to, okay, that's meant to capture all of that statutory direction that we just talked about. And the last thing I'll say is I think where I started, which is we don't expect you to do this by yourself. You've got a great team at CBI and RCRC. You've got the technical advisory group. You've got staff from DNR here to help. So if you need support through this process, please ask. We want to provide you the resources you need to meet the direction that you've got.
Well, and Erin, I might just add that in it, you don't even need to, I mean, before you ask, just know that it's going to be provided to you. So obviously, this is an overwhelming amount of stuff that the legislature has, given this group to consider. And so it's not lost on us that it's really incumbent, I think, on the DNR team and on our facilitation team to figure out, based on your input, like you've started having this conversation. We're gonna, after the break and hearing a bit more about what we heard from you, we're gonna get you in groups to talk about the things that are most important to you. We're gonna take your input at each meeting and do a bunch of work behind the scenes to try to look at your charge and bring you questions to help answer to help address the outcomes that you're supposed to produce. So you all obviously are going to have a big hand in this, but we're not expecting you to go home tonight and start making plans and charts to figure out how the heck you're going to accomplish what you want. So I think with that, do people have sort of big picture questions? I just want to let you know that when we break into small groups, one of the questions we have for you is like, what questions are you sitting with? So you will have a chance to identify those, but any big, like, clarifying questions for Erin at this point? Yeah, go ahead, Drew.
Who takes the pen for the first draft of the interim report?
Great question.
Yeah, ultimately, the report is your work product, but again, we're not expecting you to draft it from a blank sheet of paper. The support team, which is the state staff, CBI and RCRC, we will help sort of guide you to that first draft, but ensuring that the draft represents the positions of this group. But we're not expecting you to draft it from scratch. Got it.
And in general, I think what we're foreseeing or envisioning at this point is that it'll be an iterative process, and that at each meeting, I mean, starting now, we're going to get your input. We're going to go back, do some thinking about the next meeting topics, drafting some questions for you, putting some things in writing, some initial ideas, and then bringing them back to you at the next meeting to review, to vet, to provide input on, and then iterate on, right? So it's not as though you have one chance to give input on each topic and then it's done. It'll come back and you'll see things, over email, and we will iterate. Any other big picture or clarifying questions? Yes, Stan?
Yeah,
I not use this.
Yes, you should. I'm sorry. My bad for not seeing it.
All right.
looking at the schedule, so I don't see a meeting after January 29th and before March 5th. And so, but it says, discuss. Does that mean online, or what are you thinking about there?
Yes, I think that there will, and are you referring to the charter?
The high level work plan.
Yes, exactly. I think that, yes, generally, and this was developed before we set up the exact meeting schedule, so we might refine this, but yeah, by discuss, I think we mean both in the meeting that we have that's scheduled and then online. Councilwoman, sorry.
Right. So I forgot to mention my education expertise as well, which it pertains to my question. I worked at the American Institutes for Research, supporting state education agencies for several years. In addition, I've also founded a public charter school for pregnant parenting and their children, so an early learning center and in high school. Valid and reliable research is top number one for me. And I'm noticing that there's some missing voices in our competition, although it is very robust and it has been wonderful. And I feel like we are very, very strong. However, we know that the state of Colorado, 20% is Latino, Latina, Hispanic, and I'm not seeing that level of representation there. We also know that 1 in 4 Coloradans have a disability. And I think one of the things I was most proud of when I was at Colorado Parks and Wildlife is to see the efforts that were made to make sure that especially people with disabilities and others have a seat at the table where we're making the most important decision about our lives. Now, I respect the appointments that have been made, but I am interested and have questions, and they don't have to be answered right now. But in what ways are we going to make sure that we're not just having listening sessions and focus groups, but really are creating opportunities for collective ownership so that people, when this final report is presented to the state as something that is supposed to be representative of the state, that folks don't feel like they've been left out of something that's really, really critical. And then lastly, Asian Pacific Islanders, as well as environmental justice experts. So those are just some of the voices that I don't feel are sufficiently represented in the introductions, which I took very thorough notes on everybody's and what they bring. I have stars next to people, so I will be following up. But I did notice those and want to make sure that on the onset that we are raising those to ensure we are walking on our talk on all of the different responsibilities. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And
And
Erin.
if I could just start, I really appreciate you raising those. One of the things that we didn't talk about, but is in your charter, is the legislation asks you to consider and solicit expert advice and support. And so I think we do have a mechanism to bring additional voices to this group. And I appreciate that you've already highlighted some, and I would encourage others to think about, are there other sources of expertise that you feel like you need to ensure that we're producing the work that we're charged to do? Because we have the ability to bring that expertise to this group.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah,
Right.
Tyler, and I'm looking for others. Yes,
Okay.
let's do you, and then we're gonna take a break
Okay.
after this. Yeah.
So, and I touched on this with Ryan a little bit, but since we have DNR at the table, I want to mention a few things. One, there have been members of my community, of the ag community, who have signed up for the notifications and documentation and didn't receive those and have not, received the notifications that, they received confirmation when signing up, but have not actually received any of the notifications that the group is meeting. Then I'm just a little disappointed in that. And then also that the lack of publicity, the meeting was happening prior. It went out yesterday. So, we approached this with DNR and they said, oh, well, we're putting it out on Wednesday and the next day. And so, just a little more notice would be helpful. The other thing would be, I know that there were some issues with it being live streamed, but in other work groups that we've been in or been part of different processes around the state, there have been live streams of the meetings, which is extremely helpful. And so I think that if we can work that out before next time, I think that would be great, particularly for different, having those different voices from around the state being able to be part of this public process, to listen in and then be able to provide us comments. The other part will be when we do public comment. I know we had it at the beginning. I think, and as again, I've been part of multiple work groups or been the public sitting on some of these work groups. What's nice is to have, if we can set aside a little time at the beginning so that people can address what happened last time, and then time at the end for people to react, for us to then digest some of these things while we're thinking before our next meeting, is to have some of the public be able to give some of that comment, even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes at the end on both ends. And then I'll make one other comment. I try to get the attention, the recording. I heard that it was, so we're recording now, but especially since this is not live streamed, the recording was paused when we were all giving our introductions and hopes, and then started right after. So if we are essentially or not, we need to make sure, because this is a public thing, that the entirety of it is. And so I just want to call out some things on process that we need to make sure that all Coloradans can hear what's going on in here. And so I'm not trying to be rude, but I just want to make sure that we are being able to have the access that the people need to have to us.
I really appreciate those comments. It's not at all rude. It's really helpful feedback. And each of those things are things that we have certainly heard and are working on. So you noted getting the notifications out. We've heard that folks on that list didn't get notifications, and we will fix that. I hear you about getting more notice out. As folks can imagine, we're sort of scrambling to get this first meeting up, but absolutely, we want to get notice out earlier so people can participate. We're working on live streaming for future meetings, and absolutely hear you about having the recording be available and be full. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. And then absolutely, we are
Those are
working on
really
ways.
important parts for the
Yeah.
public to actually be able to hear what all of our people on the group's hopes are for this.
Agreed.
One last thing I forgot to mention, sorry, is will there be a public drive? So like when we did the drought task force, they had, we had ours so that we can, work on things, but then there was the public drive. So that the public can access these documents, or documents that we start drafting and things like that. Will that happen? It was just a
Yeah,
question.
it won't be a drive, but it'll be on the DNR website.
In our website, as long as all the documents are shared
Yeah.
publicly, yeah, great.
So there is a web page for this group on the DNR website. That will be a place where we'll be posting meeting recordings, agendas, documents, so they'll be accessible to everyone.
PowerPoint, super.
Yeah,
recording.
great.
Yeah. And just to say, Tyler, I think all the points super well taken. We have discussed it, and a lot of this is how to balance, like, really encouraging the cohesiveness of this group. And obviously, this is such a detailed, specific, esoteric topic, and there is so much you need to accomplish in, basically 6 or 7 meetings, after today and before the last one. And so we do want to have a way to have the public feel that it's transparent and have access and be able to give public comment and be able to see what's
Yeah.
happening. And at the same time, preserve time, within 3-hour meetings for you all to get it. So just know that let's keep talking about it after this.
Yeah, and I think, but one way to do that is also to make sure that all of it,
Yeah.
the public has access to all of it.
Yeah.
And have access to these documents in plenty enough time prior
Yeah.
to the meeting. So that way,
Together.
because we're supposed to all talk to our communities, that we can have those conversations with our
Totally.
communities.
100%. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna, yes,
This is
Aaron,
a
sorry.
very narrow addition to what Tyler was mentioning.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's also a way for people to submit written comments,
Yes.
if that's clearly, I mean, I'm sure there is, but if
On
it's
the
clear,
website,
it's on the
There
website.
is a button that says public comment, and
Not
so.
everybody has time to sit through, and I want to make sure that they can.
No, exactly, and
Right.
to your point, people do need to know what's happening so they can submit comments that are relevant.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you all so much. All right, we're gonna take a 15-minute break and come back at 10:50, so like 14-minute break. Please be here because we're gonna hear now in a minute what we heard from all of you, and it's really important. So, thank you. Bathrooms down the hall on your right.
Hey, Brian, I just have a question, process agreements?
Back to that. Got it.
Hey.
Oh, okay, I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's the black man.
it definitely is, yeah, and I mean, it's.
Yeah,
That's on my.
Okay.
You.
Yeah. It was great on the edge of this.
So I was.
Yeah, it was unincorporated, yeah, for like 100 feet.
I'm in Colorado, for sure. Yeah, so happy to.
Gosh, I don't know if you've been up there, but
Yeah.
it's going well.
I was just.
Basically,
Thank you. With our regional partners.
Giving
now.
For our. That's.
Wow, affect everything and, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for,
Yeah, so Helena is.
Yeah.
She's my.
Of course. It's relatively in the grand scheme, but.
Because my.
I know, it brings them so much. I was like, oh, they asked me to speak
No.
over. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Let me show you.
So where's that?
How are you?
Stuff for me.
All right, if everyone would be willing to take their seat. We're gonna get back started. Let's see, Suzanne, Jamie, Aisha. Let's see, I think would love to have everyone here because this is sort of an important part. Jamie, are there other folks out in the hall or restroom that you know of? Oh, one in the restroom. Okay, we'll give 30 more seconds. So just to remind everyone what we're doing here next, we are gonna hear from Mark on what you all shared and the kinds of things you were discussing in your interviews. So If everyone could pull up this document that should have been in front of your chairs, and it says summary of work group onboarding interviews. You also were emailed it. And there should be copies right behind where Jamie's sitting. So does anyone need it? Any work group member not have it? And just for everyone else, this was emailed to you, so it's on your emails. And I think that's it.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, everyone. I'm Mark Haggerty. I'm with the Resources and Communities Research and Consulting Group. I'm based out of Bozeman, Montana, but I do have deep Colorado roots. When I started at Boulder in 1989, I didn't watch the Colorado Buffaloes lose a football game for 2 years.
Wow.
So, going way back. Thank you all for participating in the interviews. It was nice to meet a bunch of you, and that was one of the purposes, is just to get to know you and hear from you what you were hoping for this process, what success looks like, also what some of your concerns may be. So if you just go to the next slide, I just want to talk a little bit about what we're going to use this for. So first of all, we asked you what questions you had, technical, statutory questions about the state land board, the state trust lands, the saline trust. A lot of you know quite a bit. You've worked with these lands, but a lot of you are coming to this relatively new. All of those questions that we captured have already informed the presentations so far today, and will inform the following briefing from the state land board, and then you're going to go into your work groups and discuss some of the more substantive issues that you brought up in those discussions as well. We are also using that to prioritize the way that we're scheduling the meetings, which issues we're going to deal with first. We're going to try to get into some low-hanging fruit, maybe some early wins, and then tackle some more difficult questions. It's going to allow us to know where we need to bring in some expertise and potentially some more information. So your kind of substantive ideas about what you hope for, what success looks like, and some of the challenges you might perceive, we're going to have to deal with down the road, have already helped clarify some of that, just the scheduling. And then I just want to do a couple highlights from what came through. So if you could go to the next slide. So I went to school in Boulder. I took some time off to get in-state tuition because I couldn't afford to go as an out-of-state student. And I did my ski bumming and fishing guiding in Vail as a way to earn some money while I got in-state tuition. And as a fishing guide, it was the best job because everyone always showed up happy, right? My job was just to keep people happy. You don't show up to go fishing upset, right? And actually, we heard that from all of you. Nobody is here upset. Everyone is really happy to be here. There is a strong sense of collaboration and openness and curiosity that came from all of you universally about what you hope for from this. So that's like one thing that I really want to make sure. And we heard that when we went around the room. The other thing that came out is I think a lot of the places that folks might perceive some conflicts, for example, through recreation, adding recreation into landscapes that are already being leased for agriculture. We've heard almost universally that people really understand those conflicts and want to be able to find solutions to them. So just specifically, for example, who deals with liability when recreation users come onto ag? How do you mitigate some of the potential management conflicts around fences and gates, around seasonal closures for calving or during breeding season, right? All these things came up regardless of what your expertise was or where your appointment came from. So actually these interviews for us as the planning team really gave us some hope that we're going to be able to find early agreement on some of these issues and that there are going to be some creative solutions coming forward. The other thing that came out really strongly was balancing the fiduciary responsibility with benefits. So for example, one of the things that people talk about quite a bit is how can we use state trust lands as part of the education workforce training programs across the state of Colorado. These are assets that the state has that can provide a whole bunch of different benefits in addition to generating revenue. So how do you make sure you're keeping that responsibility to generate revenue by figuring out how to monetize recreation and conservation uses on these state trust lands, but also find ways to expand the value that they have to the state at the same time. that came out really clearly. And then the last thing that really universally came out is that a lot of people don't understand state trust lands. They don't know what they are, they don't know where they are, they don't know what they're used for. And one of the outcomes that pretty universally came forward is that if this process could give the public, and especially users of state trust lands, an appreciation for their values, an appreciation for the uses that they already have and have been contributing to the state for 150 years now, that would be a really strong outcome. So you have the document in front of you. There's a lot more detail. I'm not going to go through it all. You're going to go into small groups after we get a presentation from the State Land Board. And in those small groups, what we want to hear from you is your reflections on what came forward from all these interviews. What resonates with you? Where are the gaps? What opportunities might you see kind of looking not only at what you brought forward in those interviews, but kind of reflecting and hearing from what everyone else said. There will be instructions for the challenges we'll get later, so don't worry. But we really want to make sure that this is a useful document, that it is a living document, that it reflects where you are right now, and we will continue to check in and make sure that we're hearing from you as we go forward, where those opportunities and where those challenges might lie. So that's all I have.
Okay, so with that, and that kind of frames what we're going to next, which is hearing from Nicole. And Nicole, yeah, does that work? And I think, Tim, you're gonna, we're gonna pull up another presentation. So I think what we wanted to do is give you a little sprinkling and reminder of the kinds of things that you all are thinking about, and then pause before we have you to discuss them and actually hear all the stuff that's going on with the land board, and here's, you know, all the questions you had about state trust lands. So Nicole, I'll just turn to you.
Well, hello. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Nicole Rosmarino. I'm director of the State Land Board, and I started this job in June. So I'm relatively fresh, but really excited in large part because our staff is phenomenal, which you will learn through this process. And we're really looking forward to making sure we provide you the technical support that you need to meet your lofty charge. And so my background is in conservation and agriculture policy, and I've worked for decades in the nonprofit sector and for several years in state government. And I'm excited to lead the State Land Board as we innovate to generate revenue and protect our natural assets. I will be providing a two-part presentation. Part one is the basics about the State Land Board, and then part two is really our agency's work as it intersects with the scope of this work group. We save time. I will save time for questions to make sure that we can provide clarifications. These slides will be provided to you. We purposefully pack them with a lot of information so that they can be a resource for you moving forward. We'll start with an overview of the State Land Board. I know some of you are quite familiar with our work. I'm looking at you, Matt. And so I'm really going to try to be brief, but know that on this part one, a lot of this information is in the FAQ that's provided to you for an easy reference moving forward. So let's talk about our history. We can trace our roots back to the founding of our country. The founders believed that the key to a functional democracy was an educated citizenry, and I heard this from some of your remarks earlier. And so they established the concept of reserving land in order to support schools. You may have heard of our lands being referred to as school sections, and that's why. As each state joined the Union, Section 16 of every township was not granted to the state, but to be in a trust to support the common schools. But a section in Ohio is not the same as a section of land in Colorado. So by the time the federal government got around to us, we got two sections per township, sections 16 and 36. The State Land Board was created in our state's Enabling Act and state constitution. So as the state celebrates its 150th anniversary next year, so do we. Here's a map showing our current surface ownership. It comes to 2.8 million surface acres, or about 4% of the state, which makes us the second largest landowner in the state, trailing the federal government. You'll notice that our holdings are scattered and checkerboarded, and this creates both management challenges as well as, I hope you'll see, opportunities. The checkerboard is not uniform, and that's because not every township's section 16 and 36 were available, so we received from the federal government what we call in lieu lands. We can also dispose and acquire property. So again, that's why that's not a uniform checkerboard. Most of our surface acreage, you'll notice, is in the Eastern Plains, which is near and dear to my heart, although I love the whole state. About 65% of our surface holdings are in the Eastern Plains. We have more mineral estate than surface ownership, about 4 million acres. And that's because both federal and state law generally require that when we sell land, we have to reserve the minerals. The exception is if we're conveying that land to the federal government. Our mineral estate is really important to our overall functioning. Mineral leases generate about 84% of our revenue. And altogether, oil and gas itself provided $208 million to the State Land Board last year. All of the leases, about 7,800 leases from our other lines of business as well, generated $257 million last year. Here's our mission. It is to manage a perpetual intergenerational public trust in support of public schools and other public institutions. These are our beneficiaries, and we must work to meet the needs not only of our current beneficiaries, but our future beneficiaries, which is the very meaning of intergenerational. And to do this, we see two pillars: the generation of revenue, reasonable and consistent income over time, as well as the stewardship of the assets that make that revenue generation possible. We're governed by a 5-person commission appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. And those commissioners come from 5 different backgrounds. One is from production agriculture. One is local government and land use planning. The third is education. The fourth, natural resources. And the fifth is a citizen at large. This commission governs our agency, what's called a Type 1 agency. We're guided by our strategic plan, and we just kicked off the revision of our strategic plan. So your timing is impeccable. We think the work of the work group will be very helpful for informing that plan. I showed you earlier maps of our lands and minerals. Let's talk about how that fits into the overall holdings of this intergenerational endowment. The total value of the school trust is currently over $6 billion, and that's up from $4.4 billion in 2023. More than half of that value lies in the land, $3.4 billion. Next in line is minerals with $1 billion in value. We also have smaller portfolios in water rights and commercial real estate. And finally, I want to point out that blue wedge, $1.8 billion is our permanent fund that's managed by the treasurer. Its corpus is in violet. Here you can see the yield from our assets. In particular, notice the astounding return from our mineral estates. Part of the explanation for why that provides 84% or provided 84% of our income last year. Typically, over the last 10 or 20 years, it's been 70 to 80% of our income coming from mineral leases and royalties. This is helpful, of course, for ensuring high levels of revenue, but it also leaves the State Land Board's revenue stream vulnerable because it's really based on the price of oil and gas. And that can make our revenue volatile from year to year. And so we resolved years ago to diversify our revenue stream, including by looking at some of the focus areas of this work group. Here you can see where the money goes. So right at the top, 50% of our revenue goes to the Building Excellent Schools Today, or BEST program, which is the capital construction arm of the Colorado Department of Education. Of the remainder, our net revenue goes to the permanent fund. The permanent fund itself also earns income that can be distributed. And a law in 2024 ramps down disbursement to the school finance. And so it should, by FY27, all be going to BEST as well. We have 12 different lines of business pictured here. I've already mentioned the importance of oil and gas in terms of revenue, but in terms of leased area, agriculture is the main event, with ag leases covering about 96% of our surface. We have 2,000 ag operators who lease from us, and we work closely with them to strive towards stewardship goals. There are opportunities in each one of these lines of business, and we strive to be entrepreneurial and innovative, especially through layered leases. And I heard several of you touch on that earlier today. So State Land Board relies on partnerships with local authorities. We strive to be good partners, and this is important as we have authority to make leasing decisions, but we do not have regulatory authority. So we are a landowner. We and anyone who does business with us is required to comply with local land use regulations. As you can see on this next slide, the last few years have been especially lucrative financially, which we aim to continue. And it also demonstrates the outsized input from oil and gas, but the growth of our surface leases, as well as the permanent fund income streams. This is why do we go to work each day. We are incredibly proud to be the primary funder of the BEST program. Since 2008, BEST contributions by the State Land Board have totaled $1.4 billion, enabling over $3 billion in BEST projects. And in the last fiscal year, our total revenue was $257 million. So if you combine distribution from that with the distribution from permanent fund income, the total to our beneficiaries was $185 million last year. We're really proud of the work that we do and are appreciative of this opportunity to work with you to do bigger and better things for our beneficiaries. All right, we're going to dive into part two to give you a more contextualized sense of our work in the context of HB 1332, starting with conservation or stewardship, then going to recreation and then agriculture. And I'll also touch on our renewable energy and affordable housing work. And really my purpose is to describe a jumping off point to help set the stage for really constructive and exciting conversation. So the lands we manage are natural and working lands. They need to be used to earn income for current and future generations of school children. You'll hear me continually saying intergenerational. This really is why it's so critically important that we honor and implement high levels of conservation and stewardship. We utilize multiple tools to support this stewardship duty, which I'll go through in some detail. Amendment 16 featured fairly prominently in HB 1332. I just want to describe a little more about this. It was created through a 1996 ballot initiative that created Amendment 16. Among other things, this amendment established that 10% of the state's 3 million acres of surface trust lands be designated into what was called the Stewardship Trust to preserve the long-term benefits and returns to the state through sound stewardship of the natural values of certain parcels of land designated into this trust. So the Stewardship Trust lands are subject to a higher standard of care by both the board and the lessees. Acreage in the Stewardship Trust must be within a range of 295,000 and 300,000 acres. Today, the Stewardship Trust includes 107 parcels totaling 296,647 acres. Again, these slides will be available to you and all of this information will be available to you, so you don't have to take all this down. In terms of values for which a parcel can be designated into the Stewardship Trust, that includes beauty, open space, wildlife habitat, rare plants, and more. Anyone can nominate a parcel to be put into the Stewardship Trust. If you go to the State Land Board website, there is an online submission form to nominate a parcel for the Stewardship Trust. Stewardship Trust parcels may be leased for agriculture, mining, and other uses. And part of the charge of HB 1332 is for the State Land Board to report to you all these leasing activities. And we look forward to providing you with that information. Parcels can be removed from the Stewardship Trust. This requires a vote of 4 of the 5 commissioners, and also that the designation or exchange of an equal or greater amount of land into the Stewardship Trust at the same time. Okay, this slide is busy because our staff is busy doing stewardship. It provides an overview from our most recent annual stewardship report, which is also in your materials. There are 8 principal tools and programs we use to implement stewardship. This is not limited to the Stewardship Trust by any means. This is across our entire portfolio. The first tool is the Stewardship Trust, which I mentioned previously. Next is the Colorado Natural Areas Program. 24 State Land Board properties are enrolled in this program. Asset management plans are created for our major properties. We currently have 10 plans covering over 500,000 acres of land. We develop stewardship action plans. These SAPs describe the board's approach to particular species or particular habitats that have special sensitivities and needs for stewardship. We currently have 3 SAPs in place, one for the greater sage grouse, one for lesser prairie chicken, one for fens. Excitingly, we are in the process of developing a biodiversity SAP. Currently, about 500,000 acres of state trust lands are subject to protective stipulations within these SAPs to protect those species and habitat values. In terms of lease stipulations, every parcel we lease for oil and gas has at least one stipulation to protect its natural values. Leases for rights of way and renewable energy often also have stipulations to protect wildlife and habitat. In terms of regenerative grazing, I'll hit on that a little more when I turn to agriculture. Forest stewardship and management, we achieve principally through our close partnership with the Colorado State Forest Service. In terms of cultural resources, I'm very grateful for the participation of Regina and Councilwoman Baker, and for the tribal governments in this working group. This is a relationship that the State Land Board looks forward to strengthening through the work of this working group and in years to come. We work to protect cultural resources on state trust land, principally through surveys and subsequent protective stipulations, but we know we can always do better. I also want to touch on funding. Last year, we invested $1 million in stewardship projects on our land. Ecosystem services is one of our lines of business, and what I love about it is it marries our financial and our stewardship duties. We see great potential in wetlands mitigation banks, species conservation banks, and biological carbon sequestration on State Land Board land. This is vanguard work. The State Land Board hosted the National Association of State Trust Lands National Conference in Denver in July, and we reported on our ecosystem services work. And now our phones are ringing off the hook by other states that want to stand up an ecosystem services program as well. I discussed 8 approaches to stewardship previously, but I just want to underscore some places where there's a lot of intersection between our work and the scope of your charge. First, we have a biodiversity program, and the focus of it is to support restoration and enhancement, especially of biodiversity hotspots. So think riparian areas and playas, high priority wildlife habitat, pollinator habitat. Biodiversity program staff work really closely with CPW and also our partners at EDO, at Department of Natural Resources, especially on advancing conservation of biologically, ecologically important species. I mentioned SAPs before, just want to underscore how important they are and how excited we are about the biodiversity SAPs. And then we do ecological restoration. And in addition to what I mentioned earlier with forest management, partnering with Colorado State Forest Service, we also partner with volunteers to work on riparian restoration, given how critical these arteries of life are to wildlife in Colorado and the West. Okay, so here are some potential discussion points. These, I hope you see, resonate a bit with the themes that Mark provided in the paperwork that you got when you came in. Just some possible discussion points for your consideration. First, we really welcome your ideas for ensuring adequate standards of care for stewardship trust parcels. We also invite workgroup ideas on ecosystem services monetization. This includes HB 1332's mention of non-perpetual conservation leases. HB 1332 includes wildlife conservation covering species of greatest conservation needs and many other species and habitats. So the more laser focused you all can be, the more helpful it would be for us for really identifying specific opportunities for specific types of habitat or groups of species on state land board land. And there are other key focus areas such as encouraging wildlife corridors and wildlife movement across the landscape. And now I want to turn to recreation. Trust land is not open to the public without permission. That's because it's not your typical public land. It is held in trust for a very specific purpose to support the common schools. That said, we can and do make these lands accessible in a variety of ways to recreationists. First, 1 million acres of our 2.8 million acres is leased to CPW for various types of recreation. In addition, we have 450 private recreation leases for a variety of purposes. And we also approved temporary access permits. And last year, about a third of these went to support stewardship and educational and archaeological projects. Through our strong partnership with CPW, we do work diligently to ensure that this public use aligns with existing lease rights. So we all want to make sure our recreation program is a success and works well alongside other uses such as agriculture, and consider that agriculture plus recreation equals agritourism. We have it on our land and we want to do more of it. So our recreation program has been steadily growing and we want to keep that up. Key achievements in the past fiscal year include the creation of the Chico Bird Banding Station. I love this project. I was going to go into great detail, but I won't have time. But just know it's an incredible project that actually marries a bunch of our priorities, including recreation, biodiversity, and support for educational institutions. But key goals moving forward of our recreation program include diversifying the types of recreation that we're leasing for. So think glamping, campgrounds. You know, there's a lot we can do, ecotourism, wedding venues, agritourism. This is where I was going to go into Chico Basin, but I'm sorry, Chico Basin Bird Banding Station. I'm not going to go into it right now, but catch me on a break. We will talk your ear off about it. So there are a lot of angles to discuss in the recreation context, some issues to think about. Is there support among the work group for innovative types of recreation leases? Those examples I had given previously. Are there other lease types that we hadn't considered that bring in significant revenue for beneficiaries, especially in underserved communities? HB 1332 includes recommendations for looking to other states for their lessons learned and best practices. We welcome that, really want to learn from what other states have done. And then, of course, HB 1332's focus on the saline and internal improvements, trusts, and what opportunities there may be for state land to really be supporting the expansion of our state park system. Looking forward to those conversations, which of course are very pertinent to our sister agency, CPW. This one little last piece is currently the way we can buy land is to sell land. And one thing we're interested in is moving past the zero-sum approach for optimizing our land assets. Want to turn to agriculture for a moment. Agriculture is central to the work of the State Land Board. 96% of our land leased to agriculture. Our agricultural lessees are key allies. We see tremendous opportunities to be promoting more adoption of regenerative practices across the state. We also see the need for reducing barriers to entry to new farmers and ranchers, because if we don't have the next generation, there is no future for agriculture in the state. Agricultural financial returns to the State Land Board are modest, but they are steady, which is helpful given other volatile revenue streams. Lots we want to do with agriculture. I've mentioned sustainable agriculture. I think there are also acquisition opportunities where we can buy new properties that have agricultural values and potential, as well as for other uses, including conservation and recreation. I've described our approach to agriculture. A pertinent discussion points might include which agricultural stewardship practices are broadly recognized as promoting conservation, and how can we press on that and do more of it? What measures may be needed to transition more ag lessees to regenerative practices and support for native plant and animal communities? As was mentioned in Mark's report on themes from you all, a central question is how we can align recreation and agricultural lease uses on the same property. And we really look forward to your creativity on that important issue. And finally, what opportunities are there to amplify wildlife conservation in our agricultural program? I want to turn briefly to renewable energy, not because it's not important, it's absolutely important. And we are all hands on deck at the State Land Board to help the state meet its clean energy goals. We have a goal of 750 megawatts in production capacity by June 30th, 2027. We're at 657, so we know we can get there, and hopefully early. Our renewable energy work is important. We're also diversifying our revenue, again, trying to make that revenue stream a lot less volatile. And renewable energy projects have really picked up, especially in the last 4 months because of the changes to the federal tax credit, and we want to rise to the challenge. So we are currently hiring for a renewable energy program director. So if you know anybody, send them our way. I want to turn finally to affordable housing. This is not centrally in the scope of the work group's focus, but it's important to a lot of people in this room, myself and our land board included. We've been engaged in work to advance affordable housing for several years now in response to the governor's call for doing something to address this acute shortage in workforce housing. And the cumulative effect so far has been the creation of 4,400 units of housing, over 11,000 people housed, generating $77 million in revenue for the school children. So we look forward to doing more of that. In that, I am going to close, but I do hope you noticed the convergence between the themes from interviews with you all and some of the things we are thinking about and really want your creative ideas on. So thank you.
Nicole, thank you so much for packing a ton of information into a very efficient, comprehensive presentation. I imagine that there's probably a lot of questions. And so we are running 15 minutes behind, and we want to leave you time to talk in your small group. So my proposal is if people have clarifying questions to Nicole, that we ask them now. I see at least one hand raised. Oh, Richard, hi. I see you've joined, and we'll do a quick introduction of you as well in a second. And if anyone in this room, anyone in the work group has clarifying questions, I see there's one. We'll do those. And then we may, if these are longer questions, we may document them and come back to them. So we may not answer them in the room if time permitting, but we'll make sure that we come back. So I'm gonna go to Richard first and then we'll come to you, Lloyd. Richard, do you want to go off mute? So you're a work group member. I know you had sick calves this morning and so you had to join late. Do you want to say a quick hello and ask your question? And
I'll do it. So I'm Richard Holtorf, third generation cattle rancher out in Northeast Colorado. Our ranch has been out here since 1892. My granddaddy was the ranch foreman for the homesteader. We've been here a long time on the Eastern Plains. My daughter and my son-in-law, I hope to become the fourth generation out here running this and keeping it in the family. Also a state representative for 5 years, served with Karen McCormick. We're on opposite sides of the political spectrum, but we work together for agriculture and trying to get the best outcomes. As a cattle rancher, and to the person that just presented, I want to mention one thing. Agrivoltaics has a great opportunity in your space. The convergence of agriculture and renewable energies has not been optimized. If you want to give me a call, I got a bunch of ideas on how to do that, where you can still run cattle on rangeland, and with the proper engineering designs, you can still collect solar energy. We're doing it with wind pretty well, but not everybody wants to do it, and that's a choice counties make. But the solar thing we can enhance. So I'd like to talk offline about that a little bit. And then I'm excited to be part of the team. And I know there's a lot of people worried about a lot of things, but at the end of the day, if you don't have food, if you can't eat because you don't have food, you didn't support agriculture. That's a huge problem for our state and our nation. And it truly is a national security issue. So I'm very tied to ranching and I'm glad to be a part of the team. Thank you.
thank you, Richard. Good to hear from you. Nicole Rosemarino is the director of the Land Board. And so I know you came in partway through the presentation, but there will be lots of opportunity for, hearing more. Agrivoltaics did come up this morning quite a bit in both the introductions and also in our themes, in our discussions, in all our onboarding calls. So you're in good company and we'll be talking about all those things. Also a lot of interest in finding integrative uses that support ag and existing uses. So thank you for that, Lloyd. Oh,
Yeah,
Nicole, did you want to
Richard,
come on?
Richard, we totally agree with you on agrivoltaics and we're working on that.
Thank you. Okay, Lloyd.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood. I thought I heard you say that most of the leasing is for agriculture, but the largest contributor of money comes from the oil, gas, mineral leases. Is that-
Yes, you heard correct, Lloyd. So 5.2% of our mineral estate generated last year 84% of our income. 5.2% of our mineral estate. So it's just, both solid minerals, but mostly oil and gas is the absolute lion's share of where our revenue is coming from.
Okay, yeah, we'll do one quick question and then we are running 15 minutes behind, so I want to get people to smoke.
That was a great presentation. On the lands that are designated under Amendment 16, I think you said 10% for a stewardship trust, which provides for enhanced standards of care for those lands. Is that a ceiling? Is it possible? And would that be one of the recommendations that we would be able to potentially make if we want, which would be to subject more than 10% to those enhanced levels of standards of care?
It's a great question, Steve. In the Constitution, the limit is 300,000 acres. We have to have a minimum of 295,000 acres. We can have up to 300,000 acres. So that is a ceiling. So I think you'd have to pass a ballot initiative constitutional amendment to change that.
And just quick follow-up, is there do you have any idea whether or not there's less revenue generated from those lands compared to non-designated lands?
Well, we have a great example in Lowry Ranch, which is just east of here, 26,000 acres, most of which is in the stewardship trust. It's generated about $200 million alone. So we think you can have both.
Gotcha.
Thanks, Steve. And Jonathan, you have a quick question?
Yeah, just really quick. And that introductory slide obviously said revenues are dedicated to those schools, and we understand that piece, but also mentioned other public institutions. Can you maybe just define more clearly what those other public institutions are?
Sure, we have several beneficiaries. 99% of our assets are in the school trust. But we also have, for example, the saline and internal improvements. The beneficiary is CPW for those.
Specifically, thank you.
But I'm sure we'll give you a whole list if it's not already in the materials so you can see, but really the lion's share is for the school trust.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, thank you. My guess is there are gonna be lots and lots of questions to come. We are gonna go into small groups and we have 3 questions for you. And here's how we're gonna do the small groups. First of all, the folks online, I think are gonna be divided into 2 groups. And the folks here are gonna be divided in 4 groups. We wanna make sure that and we have them actually laid out here for those. Okay. So for those of you in the room, you've been assigned a group, and just for expediency's sake, we'll read out who goes where, and we're gonna be sort of meeting in the 4 corners for 20 minutes. And there'll be a couple work group members and tag members. Please feel free to join the group just as in a listening role. If there's time, we'd love to hear from you too, but mostly just to listen because you guys are gonna be helping think about things behind the scenes as well afterwards. Here are the 3 questions for you. 1, from the ideas you've heard so far. So in this document that says summary of work group themes, from that document, from what you heard from Mark, and also from what you just heard from Nicole, what ideas really resonate for you or feel particularly important? So that's question 1. Question 2 is what's missing? What have you not heard enough about yet or needs clarification? And please, please, please make sure you refer to this, this document that says summary of themes, because we don't want to necessarily take time talking about things that actually are in here already. And then thirdly, what outstanding questions do you have? Not to answer today, these are rhetorical for now. We're going to capture them and just make sure that we come back to them. I know the land board really wants to know what other questions you have. And same with the other state agencies that are represented here. Okay, does that make sense? So we're gonna take 20 minutes, and so Aaron, Mark, where's Mark? Right there. Okay, and Sam and I are gonna each have a group. And do you want to read out who's in what group, just because people can't see probably?
Sure. Okay, group number 1, we're gonna be in this corner of the room, if that works, and you'll be with me, and that is Matt, Tyler, Nathan, Jonathan, and then if tag members Fletcher and Holly are able to join, that'd be great. Be over here. Group number 2, Ryan will go into that corner over there, and that's gonna be Zandon, Dan, Jason, Steve, Jamie, and Nicole, if you wanna join that group. Group number 3, maybe
Is Mark, he's going out there. Outside.
Mark is gonna go out of the room.
With the snacks and the coffee, no
The
fair.
snacks, and that's gonna be Lloyd, Philip, Jason. Oh, there's 2 Jasons. So this is Jason S, Martin, and then Andy and Sean, and Andy and Connor from TAG. If you're able to join, that'd be great. And group number 4 with Aaron is gonna be, where are you gonna go, Aaron? Right over here? Okay, that's gonna be Steve, Drew, Eric, Aaron, Tasha, and Dan Gift, if you're here. You're right there. You're able to join. Great.
Okay, if you have a question about where you're going, come consult the list, and we're gonna facilitator, make sure everyone comes back in 20 minutes by 5 till.
Hold on, let me.
Order. Excellent, thank you. All right, so first of all, thank you all so much. Those of you online, those of you in the room. That wasn't enough time, but hopefully you had enough to just hear a little bit from each other. What we wanted to do is take literally 1 minute per group. We're not asking for any kind of comprehensive report out because it's all in the notes. And we will put all these notes together so you actually can see what the different groups talked about. But we would love to just hear a quick, a couple tidbits from each group. So is anyone prepared to do that? And otherwise, I neglected in my group to ask somebody else to do this, so they made me do it. Which was fair, but okay, I'm just gonna give a quick couple tidbits from our group, and anyone feel free to chime in. I'm gonna try to be really quick. There was a lot of, people were really pleased to hear all of the ideas and all of the multiple hats and perspectives that people are bringing. So I think there's a lot of optimism. Really, people feeling like there is there are gonna be opportunities to both keep the eyes on the prize in terms of school kids in Colorado being the primary reason that we're doing all this, but also lots of opportunities for stacking uses in appropriate places. We talked about we have a need to define some terms. What do we all mean by conservation? What do we all mean by low conflict recreation, and put that in the recommendations somewhere. And as we talk about what that looks like, there are existing resources like the USDA has a list of, what they consider sustainable grazing practices, et cetera. There are things that could be references. And let's see, is there anything else? I think we had lots of questions. So we're going to document all those questions and come back to them. I'm not going to list all the questions, but we also talked about the opportunity to really think about how can we prioritize, incentivize, and make voluntary certain provisions for ag to incentivize young farmers to use these lands in ways that make it possible, and allow people to have sort of voluntary provisions that up their conservation practices, et cetera, and reduce these rates. So some of the ideas, anything that's like burning that I missed from our group that you want to mention? Okay, Sam, can we go to your group?
Yeah, and sure, I'll start, but please jump in. We talked about the long-term agricultural leases and why ag lessees are incentivized to do sound stewardship because of their use of the land and the renewable use of the land. Talking about how there's a lot of we're curious about finding out more about the recreation leases that are already stacked on ag lands, hunting, outfitting, guiding, that kind of work, as well as the public access program. And then we talked a little bit about like what type of recreation, because recreation comes in different flavors, and then depending on where these state trust lands are located, there might be different interests for recreation depending on where they are. And then one of the things we talked about that was missing was the ability of the state land board to buy land through the non-simultaneous exchange, and how that could be an interesting conversation as we talk about conservation and recreation opportunities beyond the existing land base, and recognizing that there is the opportunity for the land board to purchase other lands. What else am I missing?
And again, no need to be comprehensive. I think that's great. Are you good for now?
Yeah.
Your group? Okay. Mark, who was speaking for your?
I am. So what resonates so far for us, what's standing out the most is the sense of opportunity right now. We have groups with very different interests coming together to solve for this, and it feels like a very collaborative effort, pretty powerful. And there's really a lot of potential to carry those shared insights back to the state board in a unified way. One thing that was mentioned, I think that we all agree, is that the legislature gave us very specific deliverables, which is always great. And while the timeline is pretty tight, the facilitation process that you all are doing right now will help us digest that and have important. So I think that's great to have you there. There's a sense of energy around stacking multiple land uses, whether that's recreation, grazing, conservation, energy. Again, we got the right expertise at the table to explore how to make all of this work. And yeah, it's just encouraging that land boards are already innovating and growing revenue, as was already talked about, and we have a chance to influence the strategic planning. So this is kind of what our first question was about. What is missing or needs more emphasis? We still need to understand kind of the bottlenecks the land board faces, what actually is slowing them down, how we can help solve for that. A big piece is that we also talked about was non-motorized recreation, how much of it is in the state is loosely managed, and access to state trust land is limited unless there's a lease or a fee involved. So that raises some important questions around equity. Can we make access easier or more inclusive? And if not, what models from Colorado or other states? We have some examples from Minnesota, Montana, Washington, Arizona that done some innovative work there that could potentially work here. We also need to start thinking about the regional partnership initiative and public-private partnerships, thinking about other partners with local governments, outfitters, even adjacent landowners to help manage and maintain the recreation opportunities, if that does come to that point. And on the financial side, which I think is a very good point, it's like, what happens, like, when oil and gas revenues decline? Like, what are there numbers, is there data that shows it's declining, and when, by when, so we can, have a game plan or some type of standardization, some type of methodology to kind of evaluate the long-term revenue options around that. Hopefully I'm speaking to that correctly. Because it's hard to make a real good sustainable decision without knowing that.
Can I cut you off there?
Yeah.
Do you mind?
Yeah.
Just because I want to make sure we get to all groups. Remember, I mean, this is awesome. And if, just feel free to like say a few ideas because we don't want people to feel like they have to be comprehensive. If you're saying something that another group said, just do a ditto, because it's just great to hear when things resonate. Aaron, who's your? Aaron. Wow, convenient.
There is some overlap. I'll try to distinguish a little bit. We also talked about questions about long-term revenue and the need to diversify with likely decline, potential declines in some of the existing streams. And a lot of questions, frankly, a lot of ours were more outstanding questions. But how can we evaluate long-term revenues kind of pre and post Amendment 16? Have there been changes, and can we evaluate kind of the stewardship character of the lands in the stewardship trust versus those without, recognizing there's conservation values throughout, not only on those stewardship trust acres? Similar discussions about access, and I think in addition to recreation access, we also talked about other types of access, like how are school kids getting the benefit of the lands in addition to getting a check to build schools? How else can they access this as the ultimate beneficiaries? There was a lot of discussion about local control and the need to work collaboratively with local governments, local elected officials, that if the state has ideas, they still have to work through those jurisdictions, and that could be a really positive feedback loop, or it could be a gap in understanding at local levels about how those lands can be incorporated and what projects make sense. I mentioned there's a specific request to kind of do that analysis, looking at comparison to state trust lands, pre and post revenues, and pre and post stewardship values. And then we also talked a lot about, there's a ton, we love to plan in Colorado, and we've listed a bunch of these different plans, the outdoor strategy, climate action plans, there's a land use housing plan, water plan. Understanding how this process and land board decisions fit into all of those, I think it's even referenced in our themes, but something that we should also think through, because there's so much great, there's a lot of great thinking that's already been done. How does the state land portfolio fit in, and how is it distinct?
Yeah, that's
I
great.
know it was brief. If I missed anything, let me know.
Awesome. And yeah, I know our group talked about existing maps too. It's like
Yeah.
really helpful. Okay, Anne, can we go to your group and then Mary, your group?
Yeah, thank you. Erica, it sounds like you're up.
I think Richard was taking notes for our group.
Oh, great. Richard, do you mind sharing out your assessment?
I mean, we rock, paper, scissored for it, and I clearly won, so
But now he's ghosting you.
totally. I mean, if he's not gonna come up, I can ad-lib it, I guess, but I didn't take any notes. Okay. Richard, feel free to bump me off if you come back. We talked about started talking about wildlife and the opportunity for wildlife corridors, and kind of had a discussion about the intersection with that and ag. And then had a really good discussion about the importance. We had a little bit of a disagreement in our group about whether or not it was important to engage youth in these conversations. I brought up that I think it's really important as a school board member. We've had student school board members who we have at our meetings, who we ask questions, we get their feedback. It's been really insightful. And Linda Baker with the Southern Utes has had the same experience. But there was also discrepancy where some people thought that this was a topic meant for adults, and that kids would not be able to, I think, grasp the complexity of the issues and all of that. So that was definitely an issue where we had some disagreement on, and maybe we could come back to as a larger group.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Anyone else want to chime in from Erica's group before we go to Mira's? Okay, thanks Erica for ad libbing. Appreciate it. Mira, who's reporting from your group?
Mark will be reporting for our group. Although he's a tag member, we have some connection issues amongst our team, so we thought it was the most reliable reporter.
Go for it, Mark.
Okay, just a quick summary of the first question. It's important that we are good that there's a recognition that we're bringing all the stakeholders and potentially new stakeholders in on this process, especially tribal members, to engage with this process. Also recognition that the state land board's use and exactly how those resources are being used is at a crossroads right now, with a lot more interest involved. So this is a good time to analyze that. Really what I guess a lot of our discussion centered around was, one was the questions we had was accessing information, specifically, like, for example, how much is in, what lands are in stewardship trusts, where are those at? Some other questions. There is the map available, and maybe at some point there could be some instruction as to maybe just kind of going through some of those layers on those maps. As I noted, I use that map a lot, provides a lot of information, but it's new to a lot of folks here and I think could help a lot. So that was one question we had. There was recognition that was mentioned before about declining oil gas revenues. Our group, it was mentioned that, there's some carbon neutral legislation and policy goals, and how does that potentially conflict with the amount of revenue currently generated from gas, oil, and minerals on state lands? And so how do those somewhat oppositional policies, how can those kind of be treated there? So, and then of course, besides coming up with ideas, how do we move from ideas to implementation? A lot of that's going to be dependent on funding, obviously, but how do we move from the ideas, mentioned planning, to an implementation phase? So that's a brief summary. Anybody else from my group, if I've missed anything, please chime in. Thank you.
Mark. And thanks to all of you, because we had people taking notes at each of your small groups, as you probably noticed, and we'll combine all of those notes and we're gonna really process through them and think about them hard with the planning team from the land board and DNR, in terms of, thank you for recording all that, in terms of what comes next, where do we go next, where's the low hanging fruit, where are the opportunities to actually start getting somewhere. So really appreciate you all digging in. At the next meeting, we definitely, in upcoming meetings, we will give more time for those small groups, because we really value that just candid discussion and brainstorming together.
Sorry, one more thing. What is on questions, what is the shared expectation for us when we're not, for our members, when we're not here, as it relates to engaging our respective communities and the groups who are supposed to present? So I just wanted to include that in, I didn't mention it before, but
it's perfect because you're segueing us.
that's what I do.
It's like the mind meld, you're just one step ahead. Thank you.
Segue in.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly where we're going next is, now that we've talked so much about the what are we doing, now we want to talk about how are we doing it. So in your email and also in your packet in front of you this morning is something called a work group charter. So everyone should have this. Tag members, you should have this on your email and others. And I'm not going to go through this exhaustively, and it's not terribly complicated, but I wanted to highlight a few key things, including what was just raised about what's expected of you all. So on this slide and also on page, well, you'll see that everybody is listed. Everyone's listed on pages 2 and 3. And so you'll know who's who. You'll see, well, I'll say that in a second. Starting on page 3, it's work group responsibilities, like what's expected of you all, what are your roles? And on this slide that we've pulled out, the biggest one is coming to these meetings and just bringing your your ideas, your perspectives, what's important to you, what's important to your communities and constituents. Please make sure to read the stuff we send in advance, because as you can see, this is like really intensive, like esoteric information. There's a lot, and our ability to have these discussions and glean all of your brain power is going to be reliant on you being up to speed on what we set out. Aaron, did you want to say something?
And I just want to add one thing, and this is referenced in the charter, but I think it fits in the bucket of roles and responsibilities. And I'm interrupting because this has already come up today, and so I want to make sure I clarify. We have resources for you. We have the state land board staff. We have the technical advisory group. One of the things that we would ask you to do is if you have specific questions, you want to know something about what CPW does or what CDE does or what the land board does, if you could route those questions through Ryan or myself, rather than going directly to the TAG members or directly to state land board staff. The reason we're asking you to do that is we want to make sure that all of the work group members have access to the same set of information so that you can all sort of build collective knowledge rather than some people learning one thing and someone else learns something else, and then we don't have that shared understanding. So we want to get you the information you need, but if you could ask those questions to myself or Ryan, and we'll make sure that we get that information out to everyone, that would be appreciated.
Yep, and we've got Aaron's contact information at the end of this slideshow, and also Sam's as well, because questions can go to either me or Sam. And we also had that FAQ sheet that we sent to all of you, and it's in your shared folder. We're just going to keep adding to it. And so we'll use that, and the state land board is going to really use it too for those kinds of questions and for other questions. So thank you. So those are some of your big jobs. I think the other is to engage your networks. And so this goes to Councilwoman Adams' question. We are expected, we know that you all are volunteers and you're doing a million things. But I think one of the things that is really, hoped for from you is that you will, throughout this process, continue to engage your networks, your constituencies, your groups. And to do that, you are going to need information. So we're going to get you, the meeting summaries, the meeting recordings, the PowerPoints. Early next year, we'll have a chance to actually go out and do some targeted outreach to your stakeholders. And so we'll be thinking about what other materials are going to be helpful to do that for you. And, for example, it's been really clear we need to go out and engage the regional partnerships. There's 24, 25 of them in the state, and I know Fletcher and CPW and others will be really helpful in doing that. But a lot of, that I think it's in the legislation too, really wanting to get input from the regional partnerships and others around the state. So that is a partial answer to your question. We can keep talking about that. And then could you go to the next slide, Tim? So in terms of the other things that are in here, we've talked about membership so far, but it details the role of the TAG. We've talked about of the other state folks who are here. We've talked about the fact that we can bring in independent experts, people who are not yet at the table and we might need to hear from, either to the whole group to present, or in terms of individual, like targeted outreach, if that's less burdensome and more effective, we can decide. You all will defer to you in many ways. One of the things we want to focus on, Wendy Padilla from DNR is going to talk in a minute about what's expected of you in terms of open meetings law as a board and commission work group of the state. But in terms of decision-making, so when we have, we're going to, as we talked about, iterate on recommendations that meet the interests of the folks here. We're striving for as much consensus as we can find. And as you all have heard, I think there's a lot of ripe opportunity to find things that are really mutually beneficial. We're just going to keep working that. And if we get to a point where there's just like really a majority opinion and a minority opinion, and we got to keep moving, we're going to default to majority vote, to actually voting on the recommendations. But in our report, we will specify, here's why not everyone agrees with this. Here are the concerns, here are the pros and cons, and the decision makers can consider that. But to the extent that a recommendation has broad support and even consensus support, which doesn't mean everyone loves it, just means everyone can sort of live with it, it's going to have more weight. So we're going to strive for that wherever possible. And that's detailed in this charter. Does anyone have any quick questions about any of that? Well, okay. In terms of, we've talked about the fact that there's a web page, DNR has a web page. You could just Google State Trust Lands Work Group, DNR, Colorado, and it'll pop up. We'll have all the meeting materials. People can visit it with public comments. Let's see. Is there anything else to say about the website? That's good. And then finally, we have the next slide, I think maybe Tim has the, goes to Wendy. Okay, at the very end of the meeting, we're gonna talk to you about the upcoming meetings. The next meeting is on December 4th. We're trying to spread them around the state, some virtual, some in person, some on the Eastern Plains. So we're doing our best to kind of make that work. And that's all. Anything major in it? Wendy, do you want to come and give a quick spiel on transparency? Oh, someone had a question. Yes.
Is there a place or a role for letters of support and those kinds of things down the line? We don't have to answer that right now, but as we're thinking about, we get to the recommendations piece and just having more synergies there. Just the role of recommendations and letters of support and from whom, would just like to put that in the parking lot.
A great question. Do you want to say anything?
It is a great question. If we'll put it on the parking lot, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
And figure out how we can do that.
Yeah, thanks for raising those things as they come up. Okay, Wendy.
Hello, amazing, wonderful people. I've just enjoyed hearing from all of you and seeing some of your wonderful, amazing faces again. My name is Wendy Padilla. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the Department of Natural Resources. And I'm here really to tell you kind of the background of the structure of how this group will work, with the goal of that you don't have to think about it and that you just know who to call if you run into any issues. Next slide. All right, so next slide, I can kind of skip through the topics. So just a little bit about DNR as a whole. If you didn't know, we have 6 divisions: water, wildlife, land, minerals, energy, outdoor recreation, about 1,800 employees, and about 1,100 temporary employees. And most of those are at Colorado Parks and Wildlife, with about 4,000 volunteers. We do have a public service code of ethics at DNR, and we're really proud of this. We call it kind of We Are DNR. And we are just so grateful to all of our boards and commissions and work group members and committee members who really help us think about our issues. And we do strive for transparency, accountability, excellence, and achieving our mission in this way. And so we have 8 tenets in our code of ethics. You all have probably seen this in some way, shape, or form in different boards and commissions that you've been a part of. We're advancing the public interest first and foremost, upholding the law, promoting public participation and partnerships, promoting and strengthening equity and diversity and inclusion, empowering adaptive leadership when there's no right or wrong answer, demonstrating personal integrity, promoting ethical actions, and then advancing professional excellence. Accessibility is very important, and I know this has come up. We really do want great accessibility to our public meetings. And there's an email address. It's called accessdnr@state.co.us. We have about 18 employees monitoring that to get quick answers back to anybody who emails or to call me with accommodations for public meetings in person or accommodations for public meetings online. And so if anyone, the folks or the groups you're reaching out to, or you need accommodations, just email that or just contact me. We also have an anti-harassment policy, and it's linked there in the materials, and we can get it to you in paper form if you'd like as well. But it outlines our policies, and really anyone conducting state business at a state-sponsored event falls under that. It outlines reporting, complaint, investigation procedures. HR director is Richard Fields, but then you can also contact me as well, and I'll get you to the right folks. For media and legislative contacts, what we ask is that individual and group members express personal opinions, personal resources to express beliefs, no problem. Just clearly state you're not speaking on behalf of the whole entire work group. That'll be the report that comes out of this, which will speak on behalf of the work group. But if you do run into issues with media contacts, legislative contacts, Aaron Ray is your best bet. And then Chris Arend is our communications director as well, that can help you navigate things. For legislative matters, we have a director of legislative affairs that can also
help. So I think go ahead and contact Erin, and if you have any questions around legislative matters, we can kind of get you to the right place. Go ahead and skip that one. Open meetings law, I forgot my bifocals, so I can't read that. But two or more task force or work group members, just what we ask is don't email each other, call each other up and kind of talk about how you might vote or the business. We just want the meetings to be publicly noticed, open to the public, and the meat of the discussion and the business kind of happening at the meeting so that all the staff can document. A good rule of thumb is don't reply all on emails. And I think when staff is sending emails out, they'll blind CC you. Erin Ray and CBI and Ryan, again, they're not work group members. So that's why, connect with them on information you need. We'll make sure the whole group gets that information. And then again, if you have any questions about that, contact Erin.
Yeah.
Cora Open Records Act, Erin, strangely, is your contact for that too. So if you do get anything around Cora, just know like a lot of these documents are public documents. They could be Cora. We would have to produce during Cora. Paper or electronic. Public comment. So we do have a work group page set up. You can Google it. It's on dnr.colorado.gov under initiatives as well. There is a button that says submit public comment. There's information there. And so we want to be sure we emphasize that. And thank you. And I'm done.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Know it.
Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne.
Yeah, when we are conversing with groups, there are some where there's more than one of us in a group. Well, we don't know who's going to show up, but how do we talk about and inform them about any of our discussions if there's more than one of us present? Or do we have to rotate on and off the virtual call or what?
Let Erin know if you think there's an event where more than one work group member will be present. What we might be able to do is just let everybody know. And then also, if you're kind of listening, just make sure you're saying, hey, this doesn't represent the will of the whole work group. I'm just gathering information.
What
So,
do you mean by let everybody know? What was that about?
so if there's an event where, 5 of you might show up, let Erin know so that we could potentially do a public notice on it, frankly.
The public notice means the general public?
We would post it on our website page for this work group.
This is only relevant if we're talking about the subject matter of it, not
Yeah,
if
yeah.
we were on a call talking about, general conservation stuff. So I
Right,
You all
except
probably
it
talk to
comes
each
up-
other. Other
Except that
things.
you want to
Yeah.
inform, and so it will come up in some of these.
one of us can drop
coalition-
off a call.
Yeah, that's what we'll have to do.
So on your don't reply all hint, helpful hint, if it's only 2 members that can trigger the public notice requirement, wouldn't even just one person replying to one person, not all,
Right.
still be a problem?
And that's why I think the CBI and the staff will BCC everybody. So there's not that ability. But yes, it's between 2 or more members of the work group.
So it seems like the rule of thumb is don't talk with each other outside the course of the meeting about the substance of this. And if you're going to try to do the thing where one of you drops off, to have a conversation with your constituencies or whatever about the work group to get input from them or provide updates. Right? Okay. Yeah. Kate.
Hi, thank you. And I recognize I've been speaking more than I would have preferred, and so I want to honor and acknowledge that. However, I think I love the rotation of the meetings across the state. As a former commissioner, that was my favorite part, is being able to go. We are in a very mistrustful time, so I would really encourage driving the hours and hours to be wherever it is. And I'm curious, what made those meetings so special was they had community dinners or happy hours or just some mechanism where we can bring in, to your point, we're not talking about what the specific pain points or strategies, but more so the relational repair that is necessary across the Front Range, the Eastern, the Western, et cetera. So I just want to lift up and have curiosity around lodging and travel reimbursement possibilities. Again, I will do it because that's how I do. Make $7 an hour to serve my beautiful city, 20 to 30 hours a week. However, I know that's not everybody's possibility. So I just want to lift that up.
Thank you for those two things. And we have actually talked about both of them, and I really appreciate where you're coming from. So in general, I think we are thinking about ways to have social gatherings before or after and really making it clear that, like, please don't talk business, just get to know one another. Even if it's just lunch afterwards before everyone goes home. So yes, we've been talking about that. And also so appreciative for the land board for writing for you today. Like, it just really helps. And secondly, thank you, because I forgot to mention reimbursements. There are funds available for travel reimbursements. So Nick, can you raise your hand? So if anyone can request, is able to go talk to Nick to request the paperwork, there's some paperwork to do it, then that'll streamline it for future meetings. Yeah, do you want to say something?
Yeah, happy to support in-person participation as much as possible with travel reimbursement. I have to leave pretty expediently today, but I've left some blank W-9s over here. If you want to fill one of those out, we'll have to get you set up in the state system to reimburse you for the appropriate expenses. Or if you find one online, fill it out electronically, send it to any of the emails you've already seen. We'll get it routed to the right place and we'll get folks reimbursed. But for everybody listening online, please don't let the cost of travel be an impediment to you participating in person.
And can you specify, is this mileage? Is it anything in addition to mileage?
Yeah,
that's available?
like a
including
hotel night.
Parking or hotel or per diem or anything?
I should have been prepared for that, but give me a chance to put out just a couple of real specifics and I'll get them out to the group.
Next meeting
very
until
quickly.
December.
Okay, perfect. Can you, I mean, I just want to honor the people who did come across the mountains. I mean, I know Jonathan, you did, then you did from Montrose. I mean, just, I would like to give you guys a round.
Thank you.
Thank you. It really makes a big difference. I know it's a big sacrifice and it really makes a huge difference in the quality of the conversation. Thank you for being here. And for those of you, there will be times that for all of you that, you know, that you're going to have difficulty making it. And we totally appreciate and honor that too. So no problem, but thanks for people for being here. Yeah.
In addition to, and I don't know if this is realistic, but in addition to getting together socially, which I think is a good idea if it works, are there any opportunities for us on one of these in-person visits to go to a property?
Yeah, that's just
I mean, I was on the Colorado River Drought Task Force, and those were some of the best days we got to go out and actually see what we're talking about, to go to some of these places. And I know that's a lot of work for the staff, but I think it's always really valuable, even once or twice, just to go see, this is a grazing lease, this is a stewardship trust parcel. I know we can't do all of it, and maybe nobody can justify the time, but
Totally.
maybe once or twice it'd be great.
Thank you for bringing it up. It has totally come up. We've talked about it. We've talked about ideas on the Eastern Plains in particular, but elsewhere. So it's very much on the radar. I think people very much see the value in that. So stay tuned. We've kept you 5 minutes over. This is the summary. This is the schedule of meetings at this point and where we anticipate them happening. And if people have questions about them, I'm sure Aaron at DNR can say more about our thoughts about how we come up with this. But I think that's where we want to leave it, right? Okay. So thank you, everybody. Please grab lunch. So appreciative. Any final things? Godspeed. Aaron, thank you for all of it. Director Gibbs, Representative McCormick.